Hi, I'm Andrew.
And I'm Dave, and we are the IB English guys. And today we're going to talk about water. Water as the essential element of all living things.
Giles, did you bring a prop?
I did bring a prop.
All right.
And we're going to read an informational cover story from a magazine called New Scientist. This is a former Paper One text that we think is really rich and informational.
Yeah, our preview for today, folks, again, this is Paper One Prep. The first thing we're going to do is read the text aloud. I think it's important that you hear that. After that, we're going to go ahead and annotate the text, looking for key features and main ideas. We will then draft a thesis statement and conclude by making a rudimentary outline. The next video, we will show you the entire paper, score it, and discuss that in great detail.
This particular text was, again, published in a magazine called New Scientist. We'll note that it's a magazine, it's very colorful. You can see the original text down below, and you should open that and have a look at that. So while we're reading it aloud, you can read it with us if you'd like to, or you can follow along on the screen. Again, you can see the sort of rich magazine layout. We've reformatted the text for our purposes, so paying attention to the language.
Now, before we read the text, of course, we need to go over the guiding question, because you always want to keep the guiding question in mind when going through a text. And the guiding question for our text today reads as follows: how does the author use language to inform the reader and activate their imagination? Okay. Giles, what do you notice?
Well, I know this is an informational cover story, and again, we're thinking about how it's informational, but it's also going to be entertaining and activate our imagination. So we want to think about those two things while we're reading.
All right, information and entertaining and activating the imagination. What do you say we dive right in and do it? Ready?
Let's do it. The journey of a lifetime. Welcome, weary traveler. You've come a long, long way. You and the world around you are a temporary arrangement of matter and energy that took billions of years to assemble. Imagine if you could deconstruct it all and trace each part's journey.
Many of the trillions of atoms in your body were forged in the incandescent cores of stars. What did they experience as they traveled through space? Some of the water in our cells has been through dinosaurs. And there are gems that have survived all of the Earth's growing pains. Our travels continue. Your physical body will eventually return to the stars. Even the act of looking at a distant constellation takes you on a strange journey through time and space. Come with us on a selection of imaginary journeys that you will never take, but in some way already have.
Once, your blood was dinosaur urine. Traveler, water. Origin, a comet smashed into Earth. Destination, this page. Duration, 4 billion years. Water's journey began 4 billion years ago when Earth's hellish, dry, and volcanic surface was being pummeled by a relentless train of comets and asteroids. Molecules of water trapped inside them spread across the surface of our planet, and 700 million violent years later, Earth's dry rock had been transformed into the familiar blue marble. As temperatures rose, a water molecule was swept with billions more into a vast oceanic river that slowly made its way from one pole to the other. For millions of years, the molecules skirted continents, nudged the seafloor, helped to dissolve rocks, and transport gases. Across the equator, hundreds of thousands of times, it found itself at the surface of the sea, was warmed by the sun, rose high into the atmosphere, and fell to the ground in a raindrop. It seeped through cracks and became stuck in its underground aquifer for centuries. Eventually, as water does, it found its way back to the ocean.
From 3.8 billion years ago, a new deviation became possible from its usual route, cycling around the oceans and atmosphere, inside living cells, keeping them alive. And so, around 150 million years ago, our molecule finds itself in a lake on what will eventually become one of the Great Plains of North America. A brontosaurus cranes its neck down for a drink. The water roils around the beast's digestive system and is absorbed into its blood. Now it can perform the most important role Earth has found for it, enabling the basic chemistry of life.
In concert with other water molecules, it forces DNA, proteins, and other cell membranes into the correct shapes to function. It helps carry oxygen to the dinosaur's brain and shuffles electricity around a heart cell. For a week, it moves around the dinosaur's body. But the game is up once it reaches the animal's kidneys. The molecule is expelled in urine, taking with it some of the brontosaurus's waste. It sinks through the ground and, like so many times before, finds its way through cracks and fissures and streams back to the oceans.
In subsequent millennia, our molecule finds its way into a whale's brain, an Antarctic ice sheet, a glass of water, and a human heart. Later, it waters a pine tree. It sits for decades in the cellulose fibers of the tree's heartwood before the pine is felled and turned into pulp.
The molecule stays in place as the pulp goes through chemical reactions, manipulations, and drawings until it finds itself in a sheet of paper. That paper is printed with ink. It is cut, folded, and stapled. The water molecule sits, motionless, at the end of a sentence. This very one.
Yeah, thank you, Alok Jha. What a cool piece of writing, Mr. Giles.
I love the journey. I love the invitation of the journey. Again, I love the intimacy with the writer and the reader. And again, it's very playful, but also very informative about water.
Yeah, my first impressions, I just really enjoyed the piece. I really enjoyed the combination of the informative element along with the descriptive sort of, the literary element that really did activate my imagination. I found it to be a really cool piece to read.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack and explore.
Get out the water again, show them the water.
Yeah, we love the water.
Who knew water could be so cool?
I know, kind of makes me a little thirsty too.
All right, what do you say we go through what we would call our second draft, Mr. Giles, where we go back to the text and we just try to get the literal meaning of the text. Students, you can't write an analytical paper until you understand the literal meaning. That's why we take this critical step, and we really believe you should as well.
Yeah, we're going to get out our black pen and we're going to write in the left margin and talk about that. So the first introduction to this piece, the introduction to the cover story, is that invitation. It talks about how human beings are made up of matter and energy, and how this composition of human beings and living things is timeless and it's universal. And it's that invitation to the journey, a series of journeys that this cover story is going to profile.
Yeah, I really like that motif of travel and journey that's established in the introduction, Mr. Giles. It really does almost feel like a travel piece of writing. And then that motif continues on when they actually just give you the outline of the traveler. So I really like the personification of water there. The traveler is water. You think people are travelers. No, water is personified as the traveler. It talks about its origin, its destination, and how long it's been traveling. Very cool use of personification there.
Yeah, and then the first paragraph of this piece of the main article talks about the beginning of the journey and the way it's comprised of that the comets that pummel the earth brought with them water, and that helps to create the earth systems. And finally, it talks about how the water cycle begins, and the water cycle is described there.
Yeah, and I think that cyclical nature is really important for this piece, Mr. Giles, because it really is talking about how water just never stops moving, right? It just continues to go and go and go.
That's great.
And in fact, as we go through the piece, we see it's the foundation for all living cells, right? And I just think that it's almost like we're all unified, whether, race or gender or whatever creature we are, we're all unified by this element of water. Very cool.
I know, I love that.
Tell me about the dinosaur.
My favorite part, I was glad that I could actually read this part, where it talks about the dinosaur, that the dinosaur drinks from the lake and the water then helps the dinosaur's brain and the heart and all the organs, and then finally ends up in the urine of the dinosaur that's expelled and goes back to the ocean.
Yeah, I think the close of the piece is really important as well, because it talks about this pine tree, right? And the tree is important because that's where we get paper from, Mr. Giles. And we're going to follow this journey all the way down, from the comet through the dinosaur's pee all the way to this paper. It's on the paper now, and it looks like it's this period, this full stop at the end. That's where the water has ended on this journey of a lifetime.
Yeah, that's amazing. Great. It's great. It starts with 4 billion years and ends with right now. And I really love that.
What do you say? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, let's go on now and let's think about our next phase of annotating. This is our third draft. We're going to then think about carefully the guiding question. It's saying, how does the text inform us? And how does it invite us and make us imagine and activate our imagination?
Do you mind if I start? Because I really like the opening.
No, go for it.
Yeah, I just love that. Welcome, weary traveler. You've come a long, long way. It's cool, right? Like, it's mysterious, yet they're inviting me in. They've used the second person, you, the direct address. I feel like the distance between the author and the reader has really been closed, and I'm there. I'm with them.
It's got a science fiction tone to it. It's almost like Luke Skywalker is coming in. Welcome, you weary traveler. And again, that science fiction aspect is essential. Again, we see these sort of the use of questions where it says, what did they experience as they traveled through space? And the use of questions, again, incites our curiosity, thinking about these elements of science and matter that are there.
Yeah, I think this journey, the motif of a journey and travel and time is really prominent here. You know, we see our travel continues, time and space. We have, years given. I just think that anytime I see time in a paper, Mr. Giles, I want to talk about that because I think it's critical and it typically is very useful to discuss.
And then the introduction ends on a paradox where it says this is a journey that you will never take, but in some ways you already have. And I think that's interesting. You can't take the journey of water, but you've already taken this journey yourself.
I got to be honest, paradoxes always confuse me, but that's okay. Moving forward, I love the personification of water and the use of subheadings here, right? It really sets itself up as a travel piece, again, but rather than Giles or Cohen traveling, it's water. And I just think, again, it's very intriguing and it really pushes the reader forward.
We have to remember the yellow are references to informational aspects of the text, and all the references to time, like 4 billion years ago, is a great reference to time. There are many throughout the whole text, and this is, again, the informational part of it that's there, as well as that sort of rich description of the water's journey and the water cycle. So it's very informational.
Yeah, go on a little further, because I want the blue marble.
Oh yeah, well I think again we see the sort of rich imagery where we describe the sort of comets as they're pummeling the Earth. Again, this sort of rich imagery that's used is again, it activates my imagination.
Yeah, and once your imagination has been activated by all this violent diction, you see these comets smashing into the Earth, but then we get this beautiful picturesque image, the metaphor, the blue marble. And when most people think about the Earth portrayed as that blue marble, it's very serene, very beautiful, and typically it's blue. We see a lot of water there, and that's our future traveler.
Yeah, that's great. So moving down the text, we see again that personification of the molecule, the way the molecule finds itself in a lake. Again, it's finding itself there as it's traveling through. And then we have that sort of humorous allusion to the dinosaur, where the dinosaur is drinking, and the imagery of the dinosaur
Did
drinking.
this author just put dinosaur urine in my text?
Yeah, I know.
I think he did. Okay.
Why did they do that?
Because it's humorous, it's funny, it's not something I would expect to see in a scientific journal, but it's engaging, it's entertaining, but it's informative at the same time.
Yeah,
This author's skilled.
these prehistoric creatures are, again, they are, that activates my childish imagination.
Yeah, who doesn't remember Brontosaurus? We all love Brontosaurus.
That's right. But then we also, it's informational because it describes the water molecule, the way the water molecule helps the dinosaur's brain, its heart, and then it travels to its kidneys, and that's informational. That's interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of that informational aspect, I like the listing: whale's brain, Antarctic ice sheet, glass of water, human heart, pine tree. Water is omnipresent. It's everywhere, Giles.
Yeah, and it's humans and living things and all different types of things. And then again, that sort of description of the process of making paper and the way it talks about the tree and all the sort of parallel structure and the listing of the verbs to show the process that water goes through.
And it ends with the period on the sentence. This very one. Tell me about the syntax of that last sentence and why we love it.
Yeah, I love that because again, it's very meta. It's making a reference to the paper that it's written on, and again, it sort of captures our imagination. It makes us think about the paper that I'm holding in my hand is comprised of water. And again, this brings the whole cycle full circle.
Yeah, Mr. Giles, for the sake of time, let's conclude today's video just with the thesis. We'll save the rudimentary outline and full paper discussion for the next video. What do you say?
That's a great idea.
Mr. Giles, how in the world do I get from this guiding question to the thesis? Let me read the guiding question and you can get me to the thesis. The guiding question: how does the author use language to inform the reader and activate their imagination?
Okay. So I want to think about, obviously this whole text is about water. I want to think about water as the foundation for all living things that we talked about. And I think that aspect of time and space is really important. It's all over this entire text. And the whole idea of travel is important.
All right, well, our student had a similar thought, and I do want to read this aloud. Our student wrote this, and I think it's pretty tough. So here we go. By depicting the journey of the water molecule as a fantastic journey that transcends time and space, Alok Jha activates the reader's imagination and informs them of the essential building block to all living things: water.
Wow.
Love it.
Yeah, I think this is a very excellent thesis. I think it captures the essence of this particular text. I think the idea...
Time out. Which keywords stand out for you?
I like fantastic journey. I love transcends time and space, and I love building block. Those are really rich ideas.
Yeah, and from a language point of view, I love the use of the dash. All living things dash water. I think that's a clever construction to put the focus on the word water, but it comes at the end of the sentence. The subject does not have to always be at the beginning of the sentence. I like that's a cool construction.
Yeah, I agree. And then again, we've got the focus. We've got the whole idea that it informs and activates the imagination. And I think, again, it's an original creative thesis, but it has that focus on the guiding question off to a great start.
Folks, in closing, I think the big takeaway from this video is that yes, we all want to write excellent paper ones, and you can if you stay with us. However, you can't ignore the reading and annotating process. That just took us about 15 minutes to go through this process, and we have all of our students do this before they write. None of our students are writing until at least 10 minutes of the exam have elapsed.
Yeah, I think 15 is a great ballpark because it takes that time to sort of think, understand, and then really annotate carefully for the features that you want to talk about, because now we can really unpack this text in such great detail.
So come on back for our next video. We will unpack this text. We'll show you the great paper. We'll analyze it. We'll talk about it. We'll score it. And we'll have you writing fantastic paper ones in no time. Thanks for joining, everyone. And we'll see you in a couple days with that excellent paper. Take care.
Thank you.